Member statements. I call the member for Balmain.
Thank you, Mr Temporary Speaker. I rise today to speak on an important issue in my electorate, one that impacts significantly the lives of many of my constituents, often those who are most vulnerable. My electorate office has compiled a dossier of public housing residents who have contacted my office in exasperation after waiting months and often years for repairs to their homes, with issues including rat infestations, flooding, mould, even holes in ceilings. These people are the human face of the shameful problem left by the former New South Wales Labor government, a $300 million backlog in public housing maintenance work. The huge maintenance backlog means miserable conditions for some of the most vulnerable in our community, those who are living in difficult conditions while the assets owned by the people of New South Wales are facing demolition by neglect. It's a disgrace that people are forced to live in these conditions without the adequate support from the New South Wales government. Underfunding basic maintenance only leads to greater future costs as smaller problems grow into significant structural faults. This backlog is financially irresponsible and places huge pressure on tenants and on the New South Wales budget. The O'Farrell government needs to protect these important assets and invest in basic maintenance to prevent these escalating costs and to support tenants. Now, we know that this new government has abolished the role of the Minister for Housing, and we now have a complex division between different departments. And I'm sure many members will agree that it is difficult with the lack of communication between the different departments. The maintenance program is underfunded, it's not well organised in my view, and the splitting of the housing portfolio hasn't delivered the kind of reform that's needed. The mismanagement and underinvestment in these assets needs a full and open investigation. The estimated maintenance backlog, which many members have heard me talk about, is $300 million. That is in fact a 2008 figure. That is 4 years old, so it's likely the current backlog is therefore much greater than this, and the need for it to be urgently addressed is even more pressing than we may have imagined. I'd like to draw attention now to the human face of this neglect, particularly the impact it has on the lives of a number of constituents in Glebe. I won't be mentioning constituents' names, but I've provided these to the Minister, and we are working with the Department of Housing. A family in Broughton Street in Glebe is dealing with water running down her laundry walls every time it rains, short-circuiting the lights. These leaks have already ruined a washing machine and caused a dryer to also become unusable. This tenant has been reporting problems to Housing New South Wales for 2 years. However, the holes in the roof and the cracks in the ceiling remain. Another resident in Broughton Street with rat infestations in her garden, a broken fence and mould over the walls on the insides of her home. This resident had even tried to repaint the walls herself in an attempt to alleviate the mould. Just around the corner in Cowper Street in Glebe, an 84-year-old lady, Mary Johnson, and her neighbour, 82-year-old Pat Turner, who were featured in the Daily Telegraph not last Monday, the Monday before, also live in deteriorating housing properties. And we've seen their story, which was supported by an editorial in the Daily Telegraph on that day, which rightly called for an investment in these assets to stop the escalating costs. Another lady in St John's Road, just nearby, also has a leaking roof, walls covered in mould, and guttering which is actually falling off one side of the building. Again, exasperated with waiting for responses from Housing New South Wales, this tenant has tried to paint over the mould herself and clean the mould herself. Yet this resident has an asthmatic son and is greatly concerned about his health and is suffering as a result of the mould and terrible conditions inside her building. Another resident on Glebe Street is also dealing regularly with flooding, a great deal of rising damp and mould, as well as a garbage area which quite frankly is Dickensian. This resident has had health problems including bronchial asthma, and she desperately wants to be relocated somewhere else. She's waiting for a transfer like so many others. These are just a few examples of the many public housing residents in my community and across New South Wales who are suffering as a result of chronic underfunding and disorganisation. I note the member for Dubbo was also on Today Tonight with this matter, talking about public housing in his area. In my response to question in Parliament, the Family and Community Services Minister stated that $398 million is planned to be spent on maintenance and upgrading this financial year. $95 million of the allocation is for responsive maintenance, with approximately $303 million for maintenance and upgrading. This is a significant commitment, and I acknowledge the role of the Minister in this House communicating with me and my office on this matter. The question is, however, will this be enough? Tonight, I'm calling on the government to introduce and explain in full detail the future costs of maintenance, what is seen as the ability of this government to catch up on the backlog, what investment is required and what timeline is involved. I understand that this government is carrying on the neglectful weight of the former Labor government, but it's up to this government to take steps to make sure that these assets are protected these investments are secure, but most importantly, that tenants in these residences are treated in a just and humane way.
I thank the member for Balmain.